here. He went to Valley High School, coached here with Rocky Long. Remember, too, who his mentors are. Herman Edwards, Marvin Lewis, and Rocky Long. Those are pretty darn good mentors as far as coaching and who he's learned from, right? He's learned from some of the best. Herman Edwards, the former NFL coach. Marvin Lewis, the coach at Cincinnati for how many years? Rocky Long, the coach here, the coach at San Diego State. He's got a lot of people that he's learned from, and I'm really looking. I'm not. The game may not be. I may not be able to get it on Spectrum on Saturday, but I'll be tuning in to Robert Portnoy. You can better believe that.
Well, we've been playing football here in New Mexico for over 100 years. Now it's hard for me to believe, and I've been here since 1960. It's hard for me to believe we finally got a Hispanic head coach, a boy from our hometown, somebody that we grew up with, that know all about green and red chili, and of course he grew up at Sadie's there, in the North Valley by the bowling alley. That's our boy,
right,
Danny Gonzalez, and we're proud of him. And if there ever was a guy that we're rooting for, especially the Hispanic community in this town, there is our guy. We got him in there, and I thought his first game was pretty good. Obviously, they didn't have much practice. Now they're going to be practicing full 15 on 15, full 11 on 11 this week in Las Vegas. I expect they're going to play a lot better against Hawaii, and I wouldn't be surprised if we win that game. And we've got those defensive backs coming back. But you know what? Danny Gonzalez is one of us, and we've never had a guy like that. And this town, they just got to get big. I just hope we get a home game before the season's out. It doesn't look good, and we're going to get a home game. But with that saying, can you imagine if the crowd was around him, we would have had 25,000.
I think so. I think they would have. I really do, because.
Welcome everybody to American Talk It Up, and we're back here at what I consider my home base, ProView Networks, and I'm here with Ed Nunes, my co-host. Welcome back to the studio, Ed.
Thanks a lot, Marty. It's good to be back.
And, we've been doing our previous podcast shows in a home studio, and finally the city has allowed us to come back here to Comcast 26, and this show is going to be a regular every Thursday at 1 p.m. on Channel 26, and you can still follow us on Facebook, American Talk It Up Facebook, American Talk It Up YouTube. So we want you to continue following us, but it's back. It's great to be back here in the studio.
No, you know what? I want to also thank Wally Dragmeister. He was really good to us and letting us use his studio.
Yeah.
And that was really nice of him to let us do that when we had the podcast. So I really want to give him a shout out and a thank you, because he's very accommodating to us. So I want to thank Wally Dragmeister for that.
So this show is being taped on Election Day, and we're not going to know the results of the election. And probably, who knows, it could go for a week, or you think it's going to go longer?
You know what? I don't know. And there's a lot of things. There were some Supreme Court challenges by the president and his team, and then Biden, I think, had some challenges. And there could be, Pennsylvania is the key there. We don't know when those results will be in. But I think you and I had talked about it. And for me and my wife, I'm just sick of seeing the ads when we get politically added out at this time when the election's almost over. Every time you turn on the TV, it's negativity. It's a lot of lying by both sides. So I'll be looking forward to the results, just it being over, in the statewide races and the presidential race. But my wife and I made a vow this morning that no matter what happens, I'm not going to go jump off. My guy doesn't win. I'm not going to go jump off the bridge, right? I'm an American. Things we're going to keep on keeping on, right? So, and this has been for me. Now, I don't know about you. It might be the most polarizing election I've ever seen as an American. I think it is, and it's unfortunate. So I just hope whoever wins, we move forward towards mending the country rather than dividing it. Whoever wins. I'm not saying whoever wins, hopefully we move forward in a positive way, not in a negative way. So I hope that's what I hope.
Amen. Ed, I agree with you. I mean, I've got family members are on both sides. I've got a couple friends who are not even talking to me for no good reason because I support one candidate. But the thing I love about you, Ed, we've known each other for a long time, and we disagree on some political things, but we always had a dialogue. Well, you've always been able to talk to me, and we're never going to be on the same page all the time, but I respect where you're coming from, and I'm like you. when this thing is over, I'm not going to get upset because so-and-so supported Biden or Trump or whatever,
Right.
only because they have their point of view. The thing I'm worried about is the First Amendment. I will fight for you to say whatever you want, Ed. The First Amendment, and if they take that away from us, now a lot of people are upset about the Second Amendment. I've never owned a gun in my whole life. I've never been a gun holder, but I do support the Second Amendment. I do believe you should have the right, but again, with all the killings, the mass killings, there's got to be something to do with these machine guns and people using those kind of guns. I don't think that was written in the Constitution.
Well, let's remember when that Constitution was written, it's in 1776, right? So the right to bear arms, they don't see the future where there's going to be assault rifles. They don't see the weapons of the future, and so the things that they wrote then, that was the founding fathers. And like you, I've never owned a gun either, but I know a lot of responsible gun owners. I know you do too, right?
Right.
And that's their right to do that. But I think one of the things you said is the mass shootings. We haven't had one in a while because schools are mostly remote now, and hopefully the kids, and we talked about that with Las Lunas head coach Jeremy Maupin on the sports desk, the kids are able to get back in school. That's the hope, but it has to be done safely and with a plan. I just can't sit there and say, kids, go to school. What's the plan to do it safely? That's just my opinion. But I'll tell you what, Coach Maupin today, Marty, was telling us, again,
tell who's
Coach Jeremy Maupin, Las Lunas head coach, Las Lunas Tigers head coach of the football team, who's had the last 2 years, he's been the runner-up in 4A, a former Artesia coach, Artesia player.
Right.
I have respect for him as a person and as a coach, just a great guy. But he's talking about the online learning, and it's affecting all the kids in the state. There's no question about it, right? Because Coach Ottman had a big effect on you, right? And a lot of people. Jim Ottman, to me, when I think of Coach Ottman, I think of that military guy, the iron jaw. When he said something this law, I never played for him. I just had Coach Ottman on some of my broadcasts.
Right.
He's an outstanding man. Gosh, I have such respect for him. So what kind of influence and effect do teachers have on an everyday social setting at school? They see you and they say, Marty, what's going on, right? Because they know you and they care about you.
Right.
And when you don't have that human interaction, it's sad. It really is. I was that guy, the social guy at school that wanted to socialize, right? I got a lot of trouble for talking too much. But you know what? Some of those teachers had a big effect on me, and every day that I saw them, not just athletics. You and I talked about it. It's more than just athletics, right? The band teacher, the DECA club, the biology club, right? The boys state. You were a boys stater, I believe.
Right.
So those kind of things have an effect on kids every day, and hopefully there's a way that they can get back in school. That's way above my pay grade to suggest how they do it, but hopefully they can.
Ed, if this was going on back when I was in high school, I don't know what I would do because school was so big to me. Going to school and interacting with the kids and the girls and all the social events and these kids are being denied that basically right now. I don't know how I would have been able to cope. So my hats are off. These kids are going through this period because we've never, in the history of the United States, has been through something like this.
Since 1918 global pandemic. But I want to clarify something. You said they're being denied it now. Let's say why they're being denied it. Right now it's not safe. Those things right now, to put them, some of these old schools like Highland has old ventilation, right? Now if you're going to put them back in school, there's been other states that have gone back to school and had to shut it down. I'm not saying it can't be done. You and I I've never said that. I don't want to be that negative person that says it's impossible. It can be done, I guess, but it also has to be done safely. The virus the COVID, unfortunately, is raging through the United States and the world right now as we speak. It's not going away. It's not. Now, supposedly the vaccines are around the corner that haven't been approved by the FDA yet. Now, we're all hopeful for that, right? We're all hopeful. But let's remember one thing, too. The distribution in this state, Dora County, Sandoval County, Fairfax, the distribution itself is going to be an issue for sure. But once you get those vaccines, at least it gives people hope, right? It gives people hope that maybe we get back to some normalcy. It's not going to be like that, though. It's not going to be a snap of the finger. It's going to be what?
I just hope it comes back as soon as we can. And you and I don't have a magic wand to be able to do it. I hope the vaccine will help. Hope maybe there'll be more herd immunity. They call it the herd, what do they call it? Herding, where everybody gets
herd immunity.
And I don't know if that's going to be effective, but obviously it's above our pay grade, and we're not scientists, and obviously we want the kids to be back. We want them safe. So I don't think anybody's going to disagree where we're coming from. Now, getting back to the election today, I say there's going to be some key counties to look at if Trump is going to get reelected, if Biden's going to win. Right now, I just checked the betting odds that I told you about. Right now, Biden is the odds-on favorite to be president. And this is as we are taping this show on Tuesday, right now. But those things could change. I think the key tonight is if Trump can win Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, then it's going to be an interesting night. But the key counties that I think if Trump has any chance of winning, you got to look at Milwaukee County. You got to look at Detroit and Philadelphia. Those are 3 heavily black communities. And if Trump can get 15 to 20% of the black vote, and if the blacks don't show up like they've done in the past, and if the margins are lower, then he has a chance of winning those states. But if he doesn't, unless he can rack it up in counties where he had 60% of vote to 75, then I think it's going to be Biden's going to win. That's my thinking right now. And then the other thing is, for the last 2 presidential elections, Trump won the state of Florida by 100,000 votes. Now, if he wins Florida tonight by 200,000, then that's a good trend. And so those are the things I'm looking at, because it's hard for me. He only got 7 to 8% of the black vote in the last election. So if he does get 15 to 20%, that is a significant jump. That could offset these soccer mothers who just hate Trump. There's a lot of them out there, and and so that's going to be the key. But right now, Trump's path to re-election is a lot thinner than Biden. And if Biden can win in North Carolina or Georgia tonight, it's all over for Trump, don't you think?
Well, you know what? Those states that you mentioned Florida, you mentioned Georgia, you mentioned Wisconsin. Now, Florida and Georgia are flip a coin, right? They're very tight right now. Those races are very tight, so we're not sure how they're going to flip one way or the other. I believe Wisconsin, the vice president had an 8-point lead, but I'll tell you one thing. I'm not a big believer in polls after 2016, and I don't know that a lot of Democrats would sit there and hang their hats on any polls, because you saw what happened in 2016. So I think for me, an incumbent is hard to beat. They're really hard to beat. Now, the trends in the early voting, I believe that's a good sign for the vice president, but you really can't say for sure, right? I believe you're getting out the vote and the early voting, you would think that a lot of that would favor Joe Biden. But like I said, we don't. That's what I mean. I don't know if it's going to be decided tonight. The president said yesterday that if he's up in the race, that he's going to go with his lawyers and try to declare victory. I don't know that he can do that. There's going to be a lot, I think, of infighting. But what I'm saying is, remember, Vice President Gore and Bush in 2000, it took the Supreme Court by a 5-4 victory, decided that George W. Bush, they were going to stop the Chad counting in 2000. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not the guy that says, hey, it looks all in the bag for the vice president. I'm not that guy. Not at all.
So good indication. Saturday night, 60,000 people showed up in Monroe, Pennsylvania. Now, that could say that told me a lot. And the reason why I say that, Ed, is that that's a county that he won 61% of the vote. Okay, so his strategy if he can take those counties and take them from 62 to 72%, and do that around the state of Pennsylvania, then he'll win Pennsylvania.
Okay, you know what you're asking there, though. I mean,
you're asking more people to vote.
That's a big thing. You're talking 62 to 72, okay? That's not a small margin. We're talking 5% or 2.5%, maybe, but you're talking 10% there. So yeah, that's a big jump, Marty.
Okay, so just so you know, the thing that caught we're going to wrap it up here in about 30 seconds, but the thing that caught my eye, and we'll continue this, what caught my eye is they said 26% of the people there at that rally has never voted before, new voters, and that tells me that there's a chance he could rack it up in that county. Now, what's gonna be the key is in Philadelphia. If Philadelphia continues to go 70, 80% Democrat, then I don't think he wins Pennsylvania. But if he cuts that lead down to 63% and gets 15, 18% of the blacks, then he wins. I think he has a chance to win Pennsylvania. And those are indicators. People will be watching the show Thursday if we're right or wrong, but I agree with you. Those are indicators to look at, don't you think?
Yeah, well, like I said, I've been watching the CN or MSNBC board, the CNN board, and the Fox board. Everyone's got their own projections. I'm not a political expert in regards to that, so we'll just see.
So let's wrap it up. We'll come back and talk politics and sports in the next segment. To segment 2 for American Talk It Up. I'm with my co-host Ed Nunes. And Ed, you know what? Tonight's the election, when people watch this, there's going to be key indicators that's going to tell us if it's going to be a Trump night or a Biden night. But getting back to the state of New Mexico, I believe the Biden's going to win this state. I don't think he's going to win by 10 points, Ed, like they said in an Albuquerque Journal poll, but I think he wins by 3 or 4 points. What do you think?
Well, again, the poll had him up by about what you said, 10 points. Let's call it 5 to 7. But again, sometimes those polls, margin of error is what, 2 points? They had him up by 10.
Right.
Let's call it 5 to 7 points he wins by.
So I don't see this as a Trump state, but the race that's going to be interesting is the congressional first race down south, where last time the Democrat opponent won. Congressman Small now, and she won by just by a few thousand votes, and she's going up against the same woman she beat last time, Yvette Herrell. Is that how you pronounce it right?
Yes.
And that's going to be, and the reason why that race tells me something, because if the Trump people come out, and as you know, where Trump's going to get most of his votes is in the southeast part of the state, and plus up in the Four Corners area. If that vote comes out heavily for Trump and he gets it out, I think Yvette Herrell's going to win that race because I think she's going to win by more than 2,000 votes. But if Small wins that one, then my hat's off to her as a great campaigner because she's worked really hard. But the problem with her is that she's voted 98% with the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and I just don't know if she's going to win them over. But I'll tell you what, she's run a good campaign. I was real impressed with her in the debate. She did really well. I didn't think she was going to do that well. So this is going to be a race to watch tonight, don't you think?
Well, one of the things that we didn't mention is that's a Republican stronghold, and towards Social Small, winning that race 2 years ago was a major upset.
Yes.
And remember, Steve Pierce, that's a Republican stronghold down there. So if she wins again, I consider it another upset because that is, again, a Republican stronghold down there. Now, she has campaigned well for you. That's a problem about voting 98% with Pelosi. For others, Herrell's alleged things that that they said about her is a problem for Democrats. So it goes both ways, right? It goes both ways.
So that's going to be a race that I think will tell me if the Republicans still have a stronghold. That's going to tell us a lot tonight.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because how long did Steve Pierce hold that seat down there in that southern part of the state? He held it for a long time. Social Torres Small's victory 2 years ago was a major upset. It really was. So and it's been a contentious campaign. The last poll in the Journal on Sunday had Herrell up by 2. Again, margin of error. So that's really kind of a toss-up.
I see Biden taking New Mexico. I mean, I think Trump can make it a lot closer, but I just don't think there's enough Republican votes, to win in New Mexico, you got to have Democrats crossing over. And that was Pete Domenech's great success. And Gary Johnson got people to cross over and vote for you. I just don't see it happening with Trump in the state. But with that saying, that race down there is going to be an interesting race to determine if the Republicans going to get that seat back. Now, this state is, and just so for people understand the history of New Mexico, the Democrat Party has controlled this state, the state house and the state senate since 26, when Herbert Hoover was the president of the United States. We've only had, in the last 100 years, close to 100 years, only 5 Republican governors. And all 5 Republican governors never had a Republican state house or state senate. They did a lot of veto. Back when Gary Johnson was the governor, then he vetoed a lot of stuff he did, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying they were good governors or bad governors. Even when Suzanne Martinez, who was the recently Republican, she never had control of the state house. So the Democrats has owned this state. They've controlled it. And as far as right now, they still got the registration advantage. And in order to win in the state, you got to get them. Now, here's another indicator. In order to win in New Mexico, you've got to get at least 25 to 31% of the Hispanic vote. If you don't get that, it's very hard for a Republican to win. And back when Lujan and even Martinez, she got 32%. Remember when Manuel Lujan was the congressman? He got 33. Gary got 27, but he had a lot of other crossover votes. So it's very hard, don't you agree, for a Republican to win if he doesn't get that Hispanic vote? And that's hard to do if you don't get in that percentage, don't you think?
Well, yes, Manuel Lujan did that for years. He was able to get that vote. Of course, he had the Hispanic last name. You could make an argument there, but Manuel Lujan was a great congressman. So, yes, I wouldn't disagree there. And some people, as you mentioned, Governor Johnson got 27%. So, yes, I wouldn't disagree.
And it's hard. And even when Pete Domenici, United States Senator, I think he got 30 to 29, 31. You got to get that. If you don't, you're not going to win. Now, unlike Miami-Dade County there in Florida, you've got a lot of Venezuela, a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Cubans. They're a different Hispanic vote, and they're trending. The last polls I heard, they're trending towards Trump because of socialism, their experience with socialism. But it's a different animal here in the state of New Mexico, the Latino vote, the Hispanic, don't you think? Different.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that you mentioned in Florida there, they pretty much as a block there, Cuban Americans have voted Republican. A lot of them have voted Republican. Yes. Now, I just got to say this, though, because now this is a little bit off target, but if the vice president does win, Joe Biden I'm talking about, he has to really fight the progressives in his party not to be dragged down that left-wing rabbit hole, the progressive rabbit hole where they want to, it's not going to be socialism. People start saying that, and again, that's a dog whistle, right? Oh, it's going to be socialism. Your suburbs are going to be run over. Those are political talking points. So if the vice president does win, and again, I'm not saying he is or isn't, but he has to be very careful not to be dragged down that progressive rabbit hole by the more young progressives in the party. If he does win, that's a good challenge because the AOCs, they're going to want more stuff to the left. So and Biden has to be a leftist centrist, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does, but he has to be more center left.
When Bill Clinton was president of the United States, he did move towards the middle. He did compromise with a lot of Republicans.
Newt Gingrich being one of them.
Yeah, and they got legislature done. If Biden does win and he goes to the left side of the party, it's gonna be a killer. They're gonna lose a lot of seats in the 2 years later. So if I was his political advisor, I'd try to be more centrist, like you said, more in the middle, if he can do it. But I don't know. That's going to be a different story. But the key to the night's race is, can Trump? Can he? I guess. Pile it up in counties that he won 50 to 60%, and can he cut into Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Miami-Dade, Pittsburgh, Detroit? Those are heavily black communities. If he cuts into those leads and he actually gets 15 to 18 or 20% of the black vote, he will be the next president of the United States. Those are the areas where he'll win those states. If he doesn't, if it stays kind of the same, as you know, the last time he won Michigan, he won by 10,000 votes. He won Wisconsin by 35,000, and 60,000 in Pennsylvania. Those are slim margins. And then that's going to, so he's counting on a big red wave of voters out today. And if you don't see that, Ed, I don't think it's going to be a Trump night. If you do, and those are the counties I'm going to look at, and of course, I'm going to look at other indicators too, like Cook County, because I lived in Cook County for 14 years there in Illinois, and I know how they vote, how the suburbs vote. So that's going to be a good indicator. But I think those are things to look at. But for sure, Biden's win this day. I don't see Trump winning here. And I don't see the only Republican victory that we have a shot is congressional #1. Don't you think, Ed? That's about the only one.
I think Mark Ronchetti and Ben Ray Lujan is probably maybe a little closer. The debate, I didn't get to see it, but a friend of mine texted to me and said that he thought Mark Ronchetti performed very well in that debate, and that
I thought he did too.
Ben Ray Lujan, one of my friends, who's a Democrat, said this, that he didn't think Ben Ray Lujan had prepared, which I was kind of surprised at. So I don't know. Now, the latest poll in the Journal had Lujan up by 8.
51%.
Right. So margin of error there, what, 2 or 3 points. But Mark Ronchetti, I don't know if he can get that seat or not, but apparently he's done pretty well in his first time as campaigning for a congressional seat. He's done very well. I got to give him credit because remember, people identified him more as a meteorologist on Channel 13.
The way I see that race, Ed, is that he definitely won the debate. I thought he was better in the debate. But here's the problem. Ben Lujan.
Ben Ray Lujan.
He's from Santa Fe County. His dad was Speaker of the House. His dad was in politics for 30 years. Yeah. In order to win, you got to cut into Santa Fe County, and Santa Fe County is voting 81% Democrat, unless a Republican go in and cut that margin down. Now, he's not going to be able to, Ronchetti's not going to racket up enough votes in the four corners in the southeast part of the state, and Bernalillo County is Democrat, our county here in Albuquerque, and it's going to go Lujan, maybe. So unless he can cut into those margins, Lujan's going to win, and it's going to be. Now, even though I think the polling right now, the Journal polling uses the UNM polling, and I think the polling is a little outdated. Most people don't want to sit on a phone for 40 minutes and do a poll. Things are changing. It's hard to poll on the internet. So maybe those numbers are going to be a lot closer, but still, the numbers are in Lujan's favor unless he can cut into Santa Fe County. And another county that votes 70% is San Juan County. That's where Las Vegas, New Mexico. So Lujan has a heck of a family operation. He's been in politics. He's a tough opponent. He is a nice guy. Actually, I've met him a few times and I enjoy talking to him. He's a really good guy, He doesn't get people angry at him, I mean? He's not a guy that gets you upset. But Ronchetti did a good job. I thought he ran it, but I just don't think the numbers are on his side, Ed.
You know what? You make great points. Ben Ray Lujan does have a long history of Democratic. His dad was Speaker of the House, so you're right. Those are things that's tough to beat, right? Mark Ronchetti, give him credit though, has run a solid campaign and did perform well in those debates. You're probably right. At the end, does he have enough? Can he pull enough? And maybe he can't. But I got to say this: I respect the campaign that he's run, and again, he had a great debate performance. So we'll see. But you're probably right. Ben Ray Lujan will probably win that race.
Now, if he can rack it up, if Ronchetti can rack it up down in San Juan County, Eddy County, down south, if he can do well in some of these other counties, in the Congressional District 1, he might have a shot to bring those numbers closer. But it's hard to overcome Santa Fe County, where there's over 100,000 votes at 80%. It's just, they rack up a big number, and then Bernalillo County is going to go for Lujan. But maybe not the margin that in the past, but he will win it. And those are hard to overcome, Ed, when those numbers are racking up. You got to almost win 75% of the vote down south, and you're asking too much.
Well, you mentioned the political tradition of the Lujan family, right? And those things in New Mexico folklore, they travel. Oh, I knew your dad, right? Same thing with Bruce King. Bruce King, I'm not saying Ben Ray Lujan has that kind of political background, but it's pretty good, right? Bruce King had those kind of connections. Bruce King was an amazing campaigner, right? One of the best that we've ever seen in this state. So we'll see, but I think you're probably right. Ben Ray Lujan should win that. But Mark Ronchetti, give him credit. He deserves it. He ran a very good campaign.
So I don't think there's going to be, but this, getting back to the presidential race, and I don't know if it gets down to where it comes down to lawyers, like what happened in the state of Florida and votes, that it's going to be tricky. Now, that would be non-void. If Trump can win Pennsylvania by 3 to 4%, then that doesn't matter how many votes are out there to be counted. But anyway, it's going to be, and if that race is close, if that's a race within 30 to 40,000 votes, then we're not going to have a winner in Pennsylvania for maybe a week. Am I right?
Yeah, we'll see.
It could go.
That's a nightmare.
And now another indicator is Florida. As I said previously, traditionally Republicans win by 100,000 votes. If they can go 200,000, that's going to indicate it's going to be a Trump night. Hey, we got to wrap up. We're going to get back to sports, but anything else you want to say about
No,
politics?
you know what? I think we've covered it pretty well, and it's a good discussion.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm just looking forward for all to be over, to be honest.
That's right. I am too, Ed.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to normalcy, right?
Right, I hope so.
Okay, we'll get back to segment 3 here in just a moment. Welcome back to segment 3 with Ed Nonis and I, American Talk It Up. And by the way, folks, you can now catch us at 1 o'clock on channel 26. If you have Comcast cable, you can still watch us on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel, American Talk It Up. And this segment, hey, Ed, you know what I want to talk about is the NFL and college sports, but let's talk about the state of the NFL right now with the pandemic. And what do you think? You think they're going to get through the season without any more disruptions, you think?
There's going to be disruptions. There'll be some positive tests for sure. But they've done, so far, a couple of the Las Vegas Raider linemen had tested positive.
Right.
Had to sit them out. There hasn't been a big disruption so far, right? Cam Newton got it a couple weeks ago. He had to sit, and then they had to reschedule. The Broncos didn't play for 20 days, right?
Right.
I think the Tennessee Titans had some outbreaks. They're not going to get through without. The only thing we hope is nobody gets seriously ill, and that hasn't happened.
Right.
They've shown some symptoms, but
Right.
they've been able to get through the season so far. And you know what? Let's face it, Marty. You and I talk all the time. This pandemic has touched every facet of American life, European life, Tibet, Haiti, all over the world, the globe, right? It's a global pandemic, and sometimes people forget that. So, to your question, there'll be some disruptions. I just hope we don't want anybody getting that, right? Thank God the president got it, the first lady got it, they're okay, right? They're okay, thank God. Nobody wants anybody to get that. I told you, one of my friends is in the hospital, and, prayers out to Paul Unoni. He's a very, very good friend of mine, very good friend.
Yeah.
He's got it and battling through it. And, I'm finding out one of my other friends, his mom got it.
Right.
And so you're finding out people that you know.
Right.
I think when that happens, it kind of makes me even take a step back even further than what I've done. Now, I've been very careful. You say you're careful too, right?
Yeah.
So we're not paranoid. We want to live, and I'm not saying lockdown society. We didn't say that. But a guy in my situation has to be careful, right?
So on pure entertainment, I don't know what I'd be doing if we hadn't been able to watch football on Sundays and Mondays and Thursday nights, because it's been, to me, entertaining. So, I'm kind of tied down at home just like you, Ed, and we only get out here to the studio once a week, and we're very careful. We want everybody to know we're 6 feet apart. But with that saying, it's been fun to watch the NFL. Right now, I would say the number, even though Kansas City got beat the other week, I still think Kansas City is the best team in the league. And I do think Baltimore is still pretty good. Who do you think is the top 4 teams?
Well, you mentioned Seattle. You got to put Seattle in there. You got to put Kansas City. You have to put Baltimore in there. Tampa Bay's coming on and looking good. Seattle, you definitely have to look at the way Russell Wilson's playing. He's playing bad games.
And what about the Steelers?
Pittsburgh, right now, they're the only undefeated team. They've got Dallas on Sunday, so chalk that up in there. And the question of the Steelers going into the season was, would Ben Roethlisberger at 38 years old be able to overcome arm surgery? Look how well he's playing. And their defense is playing lights out. So right now, Mike Tomlin, remember this too, Marty. Mike Tomlin a couple years ago was on the hot seat, right? They wanted to fire him, move on from him. Good thing they didn't, because that's one of the best football coaches in the league. So Pittsburgh, number 1. And Seattle's right there. Green Bay have been playing well. They lost last week to Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers had been playing off the chain, right? They had a bad game against Minnesota. They should have never lost to a 1-5 team. But that battle, that division rivalry right there, it used to be known as the black and blue division. Remember back in the day?
Oh yeah.
So you never can tell. Division games are different. You never can tell, and you can't count a win, even though Minnesota's having a bad season, just like our Dallas Cowboys are. But right now, Pittsburgh. They just beat Baltimore on Sunday. Beat them pretty good, right? Now, it was a close game, and I think one of the things that they're saying about Baltimore quarterback Lamar Jackson is that when he has to make a throw and make a necessary throw, he's having problems doing that. He can run out of the pocket. He was an MVP last year, right? and he looked really good, but his passing isn't quite there yet. And the Steeler defense is one of the best in the game. So right now, Pittsburgh is number one for sure.
Yeah, and probably over Kansas City and in Seattle and there's so many teams that are at 5-2, 2 losses, 3 losses. And of course the Browns lost Beckham, but I think the Browns will be in the playoff. I think they'll get enough wins, and I do think I agree with you, Lamar. He seems like during crunch time he just doesn't come through. And of course Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and of course the Steelers got a combination defense now with Tampa Bay picking up on Antonio Brown. They just picked him up. He could be a wild card factor for Tampa Bay. Don't you think? With Brady, another weapon for Brady to go to.
And look, they've got Chris Godwin, they've got Mike Evans, they've got Gronkowski, they've got Leonard Fournette, now they've got Antonio Brown. My only thing with him is that guy, again, if you watch him coming out of his breaks, he's a very talented wide receiver, there's no question about it. It's the other stuff that comes with him. Now, he played himself off the Raiders roster last year, right? Then went to New England and lasted 1 game. So my only issue with him in question, not talent, because if you watch that guy, holy cow, he's got talent off the charts. My only question is if he doesn't start getting the ball, because you've got Chris Godwin, because you've got Mike Evans, because you've got Gronkowski, because you've got guys that are going to get some touches. What is he going to be like? Is he going to be a team guy, or is he going to be a me guy? Which the last couple of years he's been. Look what he did to Ben Roethlisberger. He threw Ben Roethlisberger right under the bus, and those guys had been. How good were they together for years? Antonio Brown is one of the best receivers in the game. There's no question about the talent. But as far as the diva antics, I got tired of seeing that. I really did. So, again, it's talent-wise. When you look at that group of receivers with Brown, Godwin, Mike Evans, and the talent in Gronkowski, who's lost a step, right?
Yes.
Sure. But if you look at that talent right there, what more? And then Leonard Fournette at running back, what else do you need, right?
Yeah.
They've done a good job of putting personnel around Tom Brady. And they struggled last night against the Giants. But Brady, being Brady, got them, and they're at 5-2, and they're pretty good.
So we had talked about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. He's had some great games. They're still a contender. He can play pretty well. Aaron Rodgers, and so the Packers are there. The Bears got good defense. The Bears probably should have won in overtime the other night. So, and of course, you got the Saints. I say there's 8 teams can win the Super Bowl right now. Right now, if I had to pick one, I lean towards Kansas City. But boy, if the Steelers can keep Roethlisberger healthy and these guys, they're going to be there. So it's going to be interesting. We're going into the second half. So you're telling me the Steelers have the edge right now going into the second half?
They look good. They look very good. And again, they play Dallas on Sunday. You would think that's a win for them at Dallas.
Right.
But here's the thing that we don't know, right? The injuries, the things, and look at all the knee injuries. San Francisco has just lost Garoppolo to an ankle injury, tight end George Kittle. Those are key players, right? So if Pittsburgh can keep their healthy guys, their key guys healthy, they're going to meet some resistance. There's going to be some bumps in the road, right? You wouldn't think they'd go 16-0. Yeah, there's going to be a couple of losses here and there. But right now, and again, Mike Tomlin is a veteran coach. I have all the respect in the world for Mike Tomlin. So I think Pittsburgh looks real good right now. You would expect some losses, some bumps in the road here and there. We'll see how they react to some adversity when that happens. But again, remember, you've got a veteran squad there with a veteran quarterback that a lot of people thought he might be done at 38 with arm surgery, right?
Right.
He's not getting enough credit. He's not. Because a lot of people said, hey, we don't even know if he can come back. And he did. He's led the Steelers to an 8-0 record. And they're looking pretty good right now.
So, I tell you the most exciting guy that I love to watch is little Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, he's like Barry Sanders playing quarterback. He has those moves, and every time he plays, Ed, he's just exciting to watch. I don't know if the Cardinals have the best defense, but he makes these games exciting, and he's fun to watch. I mean, he has entertainment value. He's one of the fun. Now, I think he's gotten better. He's not the elite quarterback, but boy, he's getting better every game. What do you think, Ed?
You know what? He's got a long way to go. He does. He's got a big arm. They got some weapons for him over there, too. They've got some speed at wide receiver, the veteran Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to be, his best years are coming. I think sometimes he struggles to read defenses. I think sometimes at his size, he struggles to see over the line. But he made some big plays against the Cowboys. He really did. And I think his best days are going for sure.
And he came back and won in overtime against Seattle. Now, with that saying, that division is open up now because Arizona did beat Seattle. They did beat San Francisco. Now San Francisco has lost their quarterback for 6 weeks, and Kittle's out for the year. And they said this morning he had a broken foot. And so now that division is up for grabs with the Rams. It's going to be interesting who's going to make the playoff out of there. I got to believe Seattle still has the edge, but Arizona's playing well.
No, they are. And when you mentioned that George Kittle, the seam-busting tight end for San Francisco, how big of a loss is that?
It's big.
Him and Travis Kelce are probably the best tight ends in football. So when you lose that, San Francisco has just been decimated by injuries since the start of the year. A lot of people, they say because of the lack of OTAs, not them being able not to work out,
right?
The exhibition games, which a lot of people can't stand. But sometimes you get those live reps, right? And they didn't get them.
Exactly. And
it hurts. And there's been a lot of knee injuries. Look at Odell Beckham's out for the year with the torn ACL. So when you lose guys like that, when you lose a Garoppolo, Jimmy Garoppolo and a George Kittle, man, that is decimating to your offense because you don't have another playmaker. George Kittle is a seam buster. He's a good blocker. He's got all the tools you need as a skill set as a wide receiver, as a tight end. So they're really going to miss him.
Yeah, and of course, I read in USA Today yesterday that the NFL owners are considering just having a plain 16-team playoff. They hadn't ruled it out, and because you look at the Eastern Division with the Eagles, the winning record's 3-4-1. All those teams. So they're talking about it where they just take the best 16 records and just put them in a playoff and seed it. Now there's been talk. I kind of like that idea. Take the best 16 teams, and it could be pretty interesting. But anyway, that's been the talk. I don't know if that's going to come about, but that just came out in the USA Today yesterday.
Tell you what, even when the Dallas Cowboys aren't in the playoffs, I love the NFL playoffs. Man, that's some action. That really is.
So, hey, listen, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to get back and talk about the Lobos, college football in our last segment. But, boy, I'm having fun with Ed Nunes. And, by the way, you can catch us on 1 o'clock on Thursday on Comcast 26 and YouTube and our Facebook page, America Talk It Up. Folks, welcome back to our final segment here, because I've got my man right over here, Ed Nunes, and we're going to talk about college football today for American Talk It Up. And, Ed, we finally got the University of Mexico playing a football game, and they had to go on the road, and they really did pretty well considering they didn't have much tackling or contact. And then they lost the game, but they played the game pretty good. They gave up 3 big plays, but you take that away, the game's pretty close. Now they go to Hawaii this coming weekend, and they're in Las Vegas, Nevada, practicing in Vegas because they can't do their practices of more than 5 people here in New Mexico. What do you think of that, Ed?
Well, I think you're right that they did perform well because they'd only been able to practice in pods of 5. People kind of forget that, right?
Right.
I talked to Steve Virgin, the assistant sports editor of the Journal, before the game, and he was saying that they thought they were going to have some problems with the offensive line. They did. Thought there was going to be some problems with the defensive line. There was. He thought there would be some issues with the secondary. There was. But all things considered, right away, what I saw, and I don't know if you saw the same thing, the flying to the ball of the defense. I saw the energy on that defense, and that's a product of Rocky Long, right? Rocky Long returning as the defensive coordinator. And now Danny Gonzalez did a great job, UNM head coach Danny Gonzalez, in signing players. His best signing or best hiring was definitely Rocky Long, right? The defensive coordinator. Seeing him back on the Lobo sideline wearing that red and silver, cherry silver.
Oh, yeah.
Man, you know what? I go back to, that's when I became a Lobo fan in 1970 when he was the quarterback here. I'm a 50-year fan of Lobo football. Now, and I told Steve Virgin this too, and I don't know if you'll agree, sometimes to be a Lobo football fan, it's a tough sell even in the best of times. Let's be honest, right? It's had some years of success and mostly some years of not so being so successful. But I've always been a fan. I'm a big fan of Coach Gonzalez. Now, I like what the kid Andrew Erickson did from Manzano to walk on. I thought Tavaka Tuioti played his heart out. I really did. I mean, he stepped up. He made some throws. The Lobos had a hard time getting the running game going between the tackles. Bryson Carroll, who they think is going to be an excellent running back for them, and gain some yards he did last year. He struggled a little bit. He struggled to get the running game going. And like you said, they were missing 3 secondary players, though. Nico Bolden was one of them. They were missing 3 secondary players, and they did give up those big plays. But I was encouraged, Marty, when they tied it up at 21-all, because last year they would have packed it in. Now, no disrespect to Coach Bob Davie. They quit on him. They quit. I thought they quit 4 or 5 games into the season. And right away, you saw that the Lobos were playing with energy. They played with grit. They played with heart and determination. I don't think Danny Gonzalez is going to sit there and just be status quo. If they don't play hard, you're going to be on the bench. That's the bottom line. Plus, no disrespect to Bob Davie again, Danny Gonzalez is one of us. He's from here. He went to Valley High School, coached here with Rocky Long. Remember, too, who his mentors are. Herman Edwards, Marvin Lewis, and Rocky Long. Those are pretty darn good mentors as far as coaching and who he's learned from, right? He's learned from some of the best. Herman Edwards, the former NFL coach. Marvin Lewis, the coach at Cincinnati for how many years? Rocky Long, the coach here, the coach at San Diego State. He's got a lot of people that he's learned from, and I'm really looking. I'm not. The game may not be. I may not be able to get it on Spectrum on Saturday, but I'll be tuning in to Robert Portnoy. You can better believe that.
Well, we've been playing football here in New Mexico for over 100 years. Now it's hard for me to believe, and I've been here since 1960. It's hard for me to believe we finally got a Hispanic head coach, a boy from our hometown, somebody that we grew up with, that knows all about green and red chili, and of course he grew up at Sadie's there in the North Valley by the bowling alley. That's our boy.
Right.
Danny Gonzalez. And we're proud of him. And if there ever was a guy that we're rooting for, especially the Hispanic community in this town, there is our guy. We got him in there. And I thought his first game was pretty good. Obviously, they didn't have much practice. Now, they're going to be practicing full 15 on 15. Full 11 on 11 this week in Las Vegas. I expect they're going to play a lot better against Hawaii, and I wouldn't be surprised we win that game. And we've got those defensive backs coming back. But you know what? Danny Gonzalez is one of us, and we've never had a guy like that. And this town, they just got to get big. I just hope we get a home game before the season's out. It doesn't look good, and we're going to get a home game. But with that saying, can you imagine if the crowd was around him, we would have had 25,000.
I think so. I think they would have. I really do, because he is one of us. And like I said, the effort that I saw them play with, you didn't see that last year. Now, Tavaka Tuioti, remember, they asked him to go into a game last year,
right,
and he said no. Remember that. He said no.
Right.
So I thought with the way he played, now there's a couple of times he has to throw off balance because the pressure's coming. I thought he improvised, he used his legs, he made plays.
Right.
I thought he played I was really, really happy the way he played, because I'll tell you, as a coach, I used to coach high school basketball, and I played, I reffed. I think when players call, when you ask them to go in and they say no, I'm always questioning you after that, because if I call you and you say I don't want to go in, I'm kind of wondering what you're made of. So I thought that he showed us in the first game what he is made of. I thought he played really well.
So with that saying, it's going to be interesting for a game in Hawaii. I guess it's not going to be on television, but we'll be able to hear it on the radio. But I'm excited, and I was expecting they were going to get blown out like 31-7 or something. But and you take away those 3 big plays, Ed, the game is a different game.
They had a hard time with the Samoan linebacker.
Yeah.
Gosh, that kid is a hitter. And the other thing is this. Remember this too. They had practiced in pods of 5. That was a hard-hitting game. Hard-hitting game. I thought the Lobos really came out with some energy. And remember, Rocky Long, what's his staple defense? 3-3-5, right? 3-3-5. So we saw that. Man, they hit some people. They did. They really did. They're going to cause some turnovers this year. They are.
They only have 22% of their defense taught. They're not playing the full through. They're still learning the defense. So once they get the full 100% package of defense, it's going to be a different team. So it's going to be interesting. Now, talking about nationwide college football, the big game that's coming up this week is Clemson versus Notre Dame. And of course, the big story is Clemson's quarterback has the virus. He's not going to be playing. And so that gives Notre Dame an opportunity to maybe become number one or in the top three. What do you think?
Well, Alabama's number 2, so they finished this week's poll only a couple of points behind as far as votes. So you would think if Clemson does lose that they would slide up to the number 1 spot. But I think again, Boston College gave Clemson everything they had on Saturday without Trevor Lawrence, and that college football has been affected by Trevor Lawrence not playing 2 weeks in a row is probably the biggest story so far in college football. So that's going to be one heck of a game because without your number 1 quarterback, who's going to be by all accounts the number 1 pick in next spring's NFL draft, it's going to be different for Clemson. But we'll see what happens. But if Notre Dame can pull that out, I would expect Alabama to slide up into that number 1 spot if they win.
Well, and with that saying, we've got the Pac-12 starting this week, so we're going to see what they look like. I'll tell you right now, I was impressed watching Ohio State. I actually think Ohio State's one of the top 5 teams. If they can go undefeated in their schedule, they're going to be there for the playoff if the Buckeyes can do it. They look pretty good. The big story is about Wisconsin losing their players. Wisconsin started out well, and so we don't know what's going to happen. The way they've got it set up in the Big Ten, if you have the virus, you almost shut down most of the team, and it hurts them. Where the Big 12, you got to have a backup player, and you can still play. You've got to have a backup for each position.
Right.
But the Big Ten's not, so that hurts the Big Ten. And I'll tell you right now, the game that was real intriguing last week was Oklahoma State playing Texas. And I thought Oklahoma State got robbed on that pass interference call. But, that's the way it goes. The breaks go your way. Sometimes they don't. So I don't know if the Big 12 is going to make the playoffs. They got too many people with losses. Oklahoma State was their best path to get there. So we'll see. Now, I will tell you, after watching Oklahoma the last 3 weeks, that's not the same team they lost the first 2 games. So they're a better team. That Rattler's getting better. But, that's just too bad they didn't have these pre-games. And so I think Oklahoma is one of the best, 3 or 4-2 teams in the country. But with that saying, right now you would have to say if Lawrence is still out, Alabama's the team, number 1 team.
Well, you expect they haven't indicated that Trevor Lawrence is having bad symptoms enough to keep him out for 2 games, which is somewhat concerning. Right. He will be back. They didn't say that they didn't expect him to be back. He should be back. But those are the things. Marty, you mentioned that about the Steelers in the NFL, and I didn't even touch on that. Right. It was the unknowns, right, about COVID might affect like it did Clemson, like it did Wisconsin. Head coach Bob Christ got it, right? He had to sit out. So and then Nick Saban got it, but he was able to get 3 days of negative tests, and he was able to do the coach on the sideline. So those are the unknowns. You don't know. Again, you might be rolling along at 10-0, and then boom, 2 players get it, and it kind of sidelines your season just for a couple of weeks. But that's enough to get that momentum stopped. So it's going to be interesting how this thing rounds out for the playoffs. That's why you want to watch our show, American Talk It Up. Ed and I have a lot of background in college football. I don't think there's very few people that we know as much as we do. We follow the game backwards and forwards. I know you do. And, of course, professional football. Now, one of the things I was going to ask you is we've got this thing here in New Mexico called the New Mexico Bowl, and usually it's supposed to be on December the 20th. Now they've pushed the bowl game to Christmas Eve at 1:30, December the 24th. But here's the trick. Because the governor won't allow us to play any games, they're thinking about moving the game to Dallas or to the Sun Bowl. I think they're talking about Cisco, Texas. That they have a stadium there. So what's your thoughts on that? Well, normally it probably would be in the Sun Bowl. El Paso and I, and us, I should say, have done things together. They're kind of like a sister city, right? But because of the outbreaks there in El Paso, there's no guarantee there that you could have it at the Sun Bowl. They're averaging 1,000 virus infection a day in El Paso. Right now, El Paso, hate to say it, Ed, that's not a place I would want to be hanging out, right? It's pretty bad over there. But I got to say this, that there's no way the governor can sit there and say yes to a game at UNM Stadium in December without predicting what the numbers are going to be. There's no way she can do that. So, I feel bad. Now, Jeff Symbieta does a great job running the New Mexico Bowl, an outstanding job. Yeah. But these are different times. You can't predict anything with this thing. So hopefully the game gets played, but it kind of hurts me to say the New Mexico Bowl might be played in Texas. Of course, I don't want the New Mexico Bowl to be played in Texas, but I also understand this is a global pandemic. Nothing is predictable, right?
So the reason why they're having the game on December the 24th, ESPN needs programming, Ed, and they figure they can probably make a little money by selling their advertising. But on Christmas Eve there's not a lot of games, so they figure, well, New Mexico can't use their stadium. That's a good place to have it. So hopefully we'll know more as this show goes. Every week we'll probably give you an update on that. The only reason I like the Sun Bowl was that you could drive to the game if you wanted to.
Right.
3 hours. I don't think people are going to drive 10 hours to go to Dallas area, right?
You know what? I wouldn't think so. Now, El Paso would have been a great spot for that game, right? Yeah. There's no way that's happening in El Paso in December. Unless they get the number. It's November now. Yeah. Are they going to get the numbers down enough so that game can be played in El Paso?
And folks, as we are talking, El Paso is one of the worst places in Texas to be with the virus. So it's not a place I would want to be recommending right now. So listen, we've got to wrap this up. We're going to come back here for our next segment of next week. But thank you for listening to American Talk It Up. And I will tell you this, please watch us, Comcast 26, YouTube channel, American Talk It Up, and Facebook. And thank you, Ed, for being my host today.
Sure, you bet. It was a lot of fun.